I think technology is so incredible. Hello, everybody. I mean, here we have Vince introducing us, and he's way on some other part of the planet. You're in England. I'm here in Oak Park. I mean, I just find this astonishing.
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful act of imagination, and it's happening, isn't it? And I guess it must be a rehearsal for some future state, don't you think?
You make me feel like I should get my office organized. Look at how lean and clean it is behind you. And I look behind me and I see nothing but, and that's just 2 of my 20 bookshelves, and I just can't
I
even.
wanna come around and look at those books and see what you've got on your
Oh
shelf. I
my
love,
God.
yeah.
Well, I will tell you this. I now getting more books on the Enneagram thanks to you in this wonderful class. We're gonna start with class 2, which is the number 1,
Yes,
which I still can't figure out why that's me, but I guess I have a strong one. But I'm gonna listen, take
yep,
notes, and
good.
you're such a wonderful teacher,
Carolyn, thank you.
Rob.
Thank
Okay,
you.
take it away, and I'll see you
Yep,
at
for
the tail
part
end.
2. Yeah, for
You got it.
sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to class 2 in our journey on love and the Enneagram. And so, yes, let's take a little look at our symbol, which really is our map for these 10 classes. Thank you very much. Indeed, Jack. We'll make sure that you have a copy of this along with the charts for each type that we're going to be looking at as well. So you'll have these as part of the experience. Today we are visiting point 1 on the Enneagram. So think 1 o'clock, and we will be sitting in meditation, and the meditation is on perfect love. We will be visiting the Enneagram of personality, and in particular the Ennea-Type One. And some of our themes for today's class include love and judgment, love and ethics, and also being ordained by love and in love. And I'll speak for the first 50 minutes or so, and then Caroline will come in and offer us some spiritual direction and reflections on what we have been looking at. So this is our journey for class 2. And we will begin with a contemplation on perfect love. And in our first class, I did mention Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet. And what I find, by the way, whenever I'm presenting anything, threads appear, like golden threads. And so those threads are meaningful to me, and I like to follow them. So I thought, anyway, we could start with Shakespeare today, having a little look at perfect love. I picked a sonnet, there's sonnet 116. This one will be familiar to some of you, I'm sure. I'm going to read to you the sonnet. I'm going to read it to you slowly to see if you can get a feeling, not just so, try and bring this into your, not just your head, but also your heart, and also into your nervous system, into your body as well. So sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his heights be taken. Love's not time's full, those rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever lived. In the first quatrain, we hear about the marriage of true minds and how love essentially is perfect and unchanging. Love does not admit impediments. There is nothing, therefore, that hinders or obstructs love. There are no impediments to love. This is what makes it perfect. Love is an ever fixed mark. Love does not change. Love is always love. Again, that's what makes it perfect. In the second quatrain, we have a metaphor, and it is the guiding star to the wandering bark. A wandering bark is a lost ship. And here we hear about a love that is not blown off course by storms. It looks on tempests and is never shaken. Love is always love, no matter what the environment, no matter what the conditions, love is always love. And then into the third quatrain, we hear that love's not time's full. Why is that? That must be because love belongs to eternity. And love is not susceptible to time. And love does not change with the brief hours and weeks. And instead, it bears it out, even to the edge of doom. And we can only imagine beyond as well. And then, of course, Shakespeare says, if none of this is true, then I've never written anything, and then no man has ever really loved. So this is a pretty emphatic statement about love always being love. We may not always be constant to love, but that does not mean that love is not always constant with us. So why is love perfect? Perfect, and especially in the work of Plato, always means whole. For something to be perfect, it's always whole. And one reason why love is perfect is because love is always like itself. Love is made up of one ingredient. Love is made up of love and nothing else. So there's nothing else to love other than love. In the Bible, we hear in John that there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. So in love, because love is only love, there is no fear in love. There is no shame in love. There is no judgment in love. We may be afraid of love. We may feel ashamed by some of the things that we've experienced that has something to do with love. Perhaps maybe we have judgments about love, but that's us. Love itself, there is no fear, no shame, and no judgment in it. And this is really, really important. Partly because if we go back to the desert fathers and the desert mothers who were studying the laws of love and the laws of God in the 4th century, these remarkable people were taking it seriously, what they had been taught by Jesus. And what they had been taught is that God is love. God is love. Now, by the way, not God is loving. God is love. God is loving is sort of okay, but it's not that great really, because that means God could be something else too. But this isn't that God is loving or that God is kind. This is God is love. And I don't know how familiar you are with that sentence, but let's just say this. The world, the consciousness of humanity does not believe this and does not act as if God is love. And yet, if God is love and love is always like itself, and there's no fear or no shame and no judgment in love, then that means God has never judged you. God has never shamed you. And there is nothing to be afraid of when you meet God. Another reason why love is perfect is because love cannot be anything else. Love can't dress itself up as anything else. Love is not changeable, and it isn't altered by time and space. And because love doesn't change, that means Love does not change its mind about you. Fundamentally, you can do whatever you want with your life and love will not change its mind about you. Whether, you can do whatever you want in life, whether you'll still feel the love or not, that's another matter. If you're not in alignment with your values and your ethics and who you are as a person, the chances are you're not going to feel the love. But the point is, if we're talking about love for a minute, love does not change its mind about you. And love has never judged you because God has never judged you. And that's something to for us as a human race to get the hang of. Another reason why love is perfect is because love is not ever diminished. You can't run out of love. You can't give somebody too much love. Not if we're talking about real love. And also, there are no degrees of love. You can't give a little bit of love or a lot of love to somebody. Love is always love. It's always whole. It's always perfect. And so therefore, something to think about here is that when we perform acts of love, it's important for us to know that every act of love is maximal. There is no such thing as a small act of love. There are acts of love where we may appear to see small effects, but let's remember, love is always love and love is infinite and everywhere. So when you invoke love through an act of love, the effects of that love are maximal. They have to go to the ends of the earth and they have to last forever. And partly our work is to do just that. It's to perform acts of love. And in doing so, it's to know that every act of love is maximal. That's exciting. And this is why love is ultimately is perfect and real and true and the most important thing about our life. All right, let's take a little look at our type, the Ennea-Type, type 1. And the name for type 1 is sometimes called the reformer, or also the perfectionist, or the example, or the idealist, and the advocate. And the life outlook for a type 1 is to live a good life. The social role of a type 1 is to be a good person. And the driver here at 1 is to have an experience of perfection. Now, let's tune into 1 a little bit more and get a feeling for some people who have sort of displayed these sort of type 1 characteristics. And I always have to start with Plato here at 1. I think this is Plato's seat. Plato talked about the law of 1 and the law of the good in describing the laws of God. Plato perceived 2 types of universes. One was the perceived universe, which we see through our physical senses, through the eyes of the body. And then the second one is an essential universe that we see not through the eyes of the body, but we see it actually through the eyes of love. And learning to love and be loved is our best chance for experiencing Plato's law of 1 and restoring to our awareness the original oneness of creation, the wholeness of the universe, and the goodness of God. Teresa of Avila, who wrote this book, The Way of Perfection, she said, "Let nothing disturb you, because really nothing disturbs love. Let nothing frighten you." Why? Because nothing disturbs love. Though all things pass, God does not change. Patience wins all things. So God does not change. Love does not change. Teresa of Avila said, the important thing is not to think much, but to love much. And so do that which best stirs you to love. She said that prayer is an act of love. Words are not needed. Music. I think Bach, the work of Bach, this most marvelous marriage of music and mathematics and melody and meditation. Songs like Sanctify Us by Thy Goodness. But any piece of Bach, there's this fabulous sense of mathematics and music working in perfect harmony and with a perfect sense of order. Today, as I was preparing for this class, I was listening to the Goldberg variations, and it's just right there, isn't it? Bach said that the aim and final end of all music should be none other than the glory of God and the refreshment of the soul. How about that? I love that phrase, the refreshment of the soul. He said, I play the notes as they are written, but it is God who makes the music. If we were to pick a character from fiction who sort of displays some good type 1 qualities, I think Mary Poppins is a good place, a good example. Mary Poppins, who is practically perfect in every way, hugely resourceful, and really, of course, in full command of the physical laws as well, you will know. Jack, will you show this picture to us all? This is a bit of a geeky moment, but I just want you all to see this picture of a book. And this comes from the opening scene of Saving Mr. Banks. P.L. Travers, who is played by Emma Thompson, is sitting at her desk. And on her desk, the director, John Lee Hancock, has made sure that there's a close-up, a brief close-up of the teachings of Gurdjieff. And P.L. Travers was a student of Gurdjieff. And actually, Mary Poppins was her attempt really to show somebody who is adept at the work and is in full alignment of the powers that she has been given by God. So there's a geeky moment. Thank you for bearing with me there. A spiritual teacher at point one that we know about for sure would be the American Franciscan priest and writer, Father Richard Rohr, who is a student of the Enneagram, a teacher of the Enneagram, and has an Enneagram personality at point one. Note how I didn't say he's a type 1. Nobody's a type, remember. We're not typing your soul, the essence of who you are. We're typing the operating system of the ego, and we're going to get to that more in a bit. One of Richard Rohr's books is this one, Eager to Love, The Alternative Way of Francis of Assisi. And in it, he says that the most powerful, most needed, and most essential teaching is always about love. Love is our foundation and our destiny. It is where we come from and where we are headed. He said, my hope whenever I speak or write is to help clear away the impediment to receiving, allowing, trusting, and participating in a foundational love. So the impediments are not with love. The impediments are with us. And we can do something about that. That's the good news. One more person that I thought I might mention, who I do know for a fact has a type 1 personality, and that's my brother. My brother David. His friends have for a long time called him Lord Holden, because he is a good egg. He's Mr. Ethical. He's very stoic. He's very traditional. He loves tradition. He renovates Victorian houses. His construction company is called the Penny Farthing Construction Company. But he's also pioneering. And it's an interesting thing at point one. We appreciate tradition and we're here to move it on. He has a touch of OCD, I think it's fair to say. He's as good as his word. When he gets angry, he's a little bit like John Cleese and Basil Fawlty. And I know that one way I can love him is to take him out to play every now and then. Sometimes at one, we forget to go out to play. And so I can do that because he carries a lot of responsibilities in his life. And it's nice to be able to just put those responsibilities down every now and then so we can come back to them refreshed. Refreshment for the soul. All right, let's have a look at the chart that we're going to use for the Enneagram Type 1. And this chart shows you first and foremost that the path is a path of perfect love. We have the reformer, we've got the name. And remember, the name is always something to do with a life outlook and a social role. And then we've got a little journey to take where we're going to look at the basic fear, which is what we carry in our nervous system. The center of intelligence, we've got body, heart, and head, and everybody's got a body, a heart, and a head, but the center of intelligence here at 1 is the body. I'll say a bit more about that. The passion is the source of suffering that exists over the heart, which is what the Desert Fathers and Desert Mothers particularly were looking at. The fixation is that thing that disturbs the our psychology and also distorts our perception. So we're going to look here at how judging actually distorts our perception. The virtue is where we are more in contact with our soul nature, and here it's serenity, and serenity is a mind without judgment. And then the holy idea, which is very much to do with the work of Plato, the holy idea here is partly a perfect love, and a love that is infused into the fabric of creation. That's what makes it so perfect. We're going to start with the basic fear and the fall. So that's where we'll begin. And thank you, Jack. We can take that one down now. So when we start to look at the basic fear, we have to really acknowledge that there is a basic drama that exists in each and every one of us between the psyche, the awareness of our soul, and our persona, the psychology of our ego. And for many of us, we experience a split between the psyche and the persona in the same way that we experience a split between heaven and earth, spirit and matter, ego and God. Now, the teaching of the Enneagram is that split does not really exist. It's perceived in the perceived universe, but in the essential universe, the oneness is still very much the oneness. But let's look first at the psyche, the soul. At 1, we are very much with what Matthew Fox would call the original blessing. And the original blessing is what we experience when we are in touch with our soul and with our psyche, which sees through the eyes of the heart, what the mystics call the nous, the N-O-U-S. And on a soul level, we know that God is good and that God is love. And we know also that the world is good. And for example, in Genesis, 5 times we're told that the world is good and actually once very good. The basic truth that we are in touch with on a soul level is I am lovable. I am lovable. And we are very much with a basic trust, which is I am loved and life loves me. Deep within you is everything that is perfect. Now, babies embody the basic truth. I am lovable. Why are babies so lovable? It is because they embody this basic truth. And I thought what I might do is just read to you a little bit about that from Lovability, just to give you a flavor of this. Babies are generally short, chubby, and toothless, without much hair, and they leak a lot at both ends. Every baby looks perfect, even ones with missing stomachs, chromosomal abnormalities, and crippled limbs. Is this because their nostrils are often heart-shaped? When you really pay attention to babies, you notice that their bodies are still in soft focus. They are barely physical. The soul dances lightly across the body. They are pure energy. They are the vibration of love. They are a lively flame that is not weary or tired or confounded. When you pay attention to a baby, you notice how naked he or she is. Babies haven't put anything on themselves yet. They have no masks, no personas, no armor, and no dark glasses. They are still wearing what Zen Buddhists call the original face. They aren't putting on a face for the world to see. What you're witnessing is their true nature. They aren't trying to be someone, to be nice, to look good, or to be interesting. There are no pretenses. There is no deceit. There is no attempt to create a pleasing image. They aren't trying to be lovable. They are lovable. Babies embody the basic truth about us, which is that we are all lovable. Babies are close to what I call the unconditioned self, which is the name that I give to our one true self. Babies are close to the original blessing, which cannot be undone. Your eternal loveliness has no end. You are made of love, and this is the key to knowing how to love and be loved. The point is we all of us surrender to the loveliness and the lovableness of a baby. We come with it. It's there. And then along the way, we experience the fall from grace. And this is where we begin to identify more with the body and with a sense of me and I than we do with the soul. We don't experience ourselves now so much as a soul or as a spirit or as a lively flame. So on the ego level, we're wondering, is there a God? On an ego level, we're wondering, is the world good? Now, instead of being with the basic truth, which is I am lovable, we have a basic doubt. And the doubt is, am I lovable? And we're questioning, am I loved? And does life love me? And we're not really seeing with the eyes of the heart anymore. Now we're seeing with the eyes of the body. And all of this is because we are experiencing the separation, the sense of separateness. And the sense of separateness is humanity's original wound. It is our first trauma. It is the cause of the basic fear that we carry in our nervous system. It is the cause of the passion, the source of suffering that we have over our heart. And it is also a cause of the fixation that distorts our perception and our psychology. And therefore, love is our most basic need and our saving grace. Plato said, love is born into every human being. It calls back the halves of our original nature together. It tries to make one out of two and heal the wound of human nature. This is the work. So from the separation, this sense of separateness, we experience a basic fear. We have fallen to earth. In our belly, there's this sense something isn't right here. In our head, we are asking ourselves, what's wrong with this picture? And in our heart, we are wondering, have I done something wrong? The basic fear is based on a judgment. And the judgment is, what if I'm bad? What if I'm somehow corrupt? What if I am somehow not good enough? There's a line in A Course in Miracles which says, you have so little faith in yourself because you are unwilling to accept the fact that perfect love is in you. But we forget that in the separation. Well, what do we do with the basic fear that we're not good enough? What we do with it is we take on a role in the family, a childhood role. And the childhood role that we take on is the role of the good child. Now, our psyche has the experience of innate goodness. It's based on that. And so actually, our basic drive is to be good. It feels good to be good. We want to experience our goodness because we're clothed in goodness after all. And being good aligns us with an innate goodness. So we arrive with an innate goodness for sure. But when we forget about the innate goodness because of the separation and the basic fear, what if there's something wrong with me? Then we experience a loss of that innate goodness. And when we lose sight of our innate goodness, we become afraid that maybe others are judging me. Maybe that life is judging me. Maybe God is judging me. So I better be good. The solution to this basic fear is to take on a role. And the role we're taking on is a role that is going to compensate for a fear, manage a fear, and even maybe suppress a fear. And so, as I say, at one, the childhood role is to be a good child. Often at one, we become little adults. I was coaching somebody recently who said I was 40 years old before I became a teenager. As a young child, we often take on a lot of responsibilities. Now, wanting to be a good person is natural, but telling yourself you must always be good so that you deserve love, that's a problem. What we are working with now on a persona level, an ego level, is a super ego command. We're now going to put ourselves under pressure to be good. Not just good every now and then, but always good. All of the time. Even on weekends. And even when God is not watching. The good child believes when I am good, I am lovable. Being good equals being lovable. And this is the problem. Now, the childhood role then moves into a more of a social role of the good person. It becomes the lifetime role. And roles, we're going to look at this on this program. Roles are often our biggest blocks to the awareness of love's presence. So at one, we're going to be a good kid, we're going to be a good student and a good friend. We'll be a good lover, a good husband, a good parent, a good leader, a good politician, a good monk, a good spiritual student. And all of that on a soul level is our joy because it aligns us to our innate goodness. But on an ego level, it's a huge pressure. And it's such a pressure that it often causes us a lot of suffering. Now, I thought I would share with you a little story about the pressures of having to be a good boy or a good girl. And this is a story that I wrote up in Life Loves You. And it's a true story. And it's a story that is about my daughter, Bo. And I hope it tells you how old she was at the time, but I'm thinking she was something like 7 or 8, something like that. Anyway, here we go. One Saturday morning, not so long ago, my children and I set out on an adventure. We had the whole day to ourselves as Holly was attending a program on biographical counseling, which maps the phases of your life, including early childhood. Bo, Christopher, and I went in search of the golden pheasant that lives in the Royal Botanic Gardens, also known as Kew Gardens. Most members of the Kew Friends have never seen the golden pheasant, but we have. We've seen it many times. Not just in our imagination, by the way, it's actually real. On our way, we stopped off at our favorite health food shop in Kew called Oliver's Whole Foods. Bo and I picked delicious snacks from the shelves and dropped them into a basket that Christopher was wheeling around. The basket was as big as he was, and it soon became quite heavy with lots of healthy treats. Christopher manfully pulled the basket towards the counter. He must have been I'm guessing about 4 at the time, something like that. While we were standing in line, ready to pay for all of our goodies, a friendly-looking lady we did not know engaged us in conversation. "What's your name?" she asked, looking at Bo. Bo told her, and then the woman said, "Are you a good little girl?" And Bo didn't answer, and the friendly-looking lady turned to Christopher. "What's your name?" she asked. Christopher said Bistifer, which is how he said his name at that point, which is nearly Christopher, especially when you're only a toddler. "Oh," she said, "and are you a good little boy?" So she'd asked them both by now, are they good little children? The friendly-looking lady looked into the basket that Christopher was holding. "My goodness," she exclaimed, "you must have been a good girl and a good boy for Daddy to get you all these treats." She smiled at me as she said this. Bo wasn't smiling. I knew what she was thinking. I wasn't sure what Christopher was making of all of this. I hoped it was flying over his head. "Well, I'm sure you are very good children. Only very good children get treats," she said. We packed our treats into a rucksack and walked out of the shop. After just a few paces, Bo gave a firm tug on my coat. "Daddy, we need to talk," she told me. "I thought we might," I said. "You see, I don't want to be a good girl," she said most adamantly. "Well, what would you like to be?" I asked. "I'd like to be a lovely girl," she said. "What's a lovely girl like?" I asked. "Well, it's like this," she told me. "When I go out, people say to me, 'You're a lovely girl,' and all I have to say is thank you." "Bo, you are a lovely girl," I said. "Thank you," she said with a big smile. What I'm trying to convey in that story is how when you keep getting told you're good, after a while you wonder, well, what would it be like if I wasn't good? And would I still get this approval? And would I still get your smile? And would everything still be okay? Let's look at the source of suffering that exists over the heart. And this is the passion. And the passion at one is anger. Type ones are known as anger types in the Enneagram. Actually, it's 8, 9s, and 1s are known as anger types, but this is short form. The point is, everyone is doing anger management. All of us experience anger. And actually, interestingly, most of us use another name for anger because actually anger is one of the emotions that we judge the most. So we may say, "I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed." Now, type ones, by the way, do disappointment very well. This is a relationship tip rather for type ones. Beware of the gaze of disappointment. You can curse people with your gaze of disappointment. Your children grow up in fear of your gaze of disappointment. You can make a grown man or woman cry with your gaze of disappointment. We might say, "I'm not angry, I'm frustrated." Frustrated with ourselves. At one, we can self-flagellate. We don't live up to our high standards. We don't live up to our own ideals. We're frustrated with ourselves, and then that spills over, as of course it will. And frustration now is aimed at other people's shortcomings. And in particular, we're frustrated with the world for not being more righteous and fairer. I'm not angry, I'm aggrieved. We're all carrying grievances. And some of us, we process our sadness with anger, and others of us, we process our anger with sadness. We're sad. Yeah. I'm not angry, I'm resentful. Why do I always have to be the good one around here? Why am I always the responsible one around here? Why can't people stack the dishwasher properly? Why am I even living on this second-rate planet? I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm fine. Okay, I'm fine. Suppressed, more like. Anger is the emotion that we judge the most. But let's not do that for a moment. Let's just get curious about anger. Why are we angry, really? Why do we get angry, really? I'm going to give you 3 reasons why I think we do. One of them is that we are actually grieving the loss of our own goodness. We're grieving the loss of our own goodness. That loss of goodness is a very painful experience. And we're afraid that we're not good, and that scares us. And when we're scared, we get angry. Another reason we get angry is because we're not in our true power. I'm angry because I feel powerless in a certain situation. And another reason that I get angry is because I'm not in alignment with love. Love is the greatest power of all. And so therefore, anger is a call for love. Whenever we're angry, we're being asked to use this as an opportunity, according to the Enneagram, to realign ourselves with the greatest power there is. So just think about this for a moment. Think of a situation in your life where you're frustrated, where you're resentful, where you're impatient, where you're angry, where you're upset. And think of a relationship which is frustrating. And notice how often, again, this anger is because we feel powerless in this situation right now. And the ego, by the way, is always going to feel powerless because the ego by itself really can't do anything. The ego must be an instrument for the love, for the higher love. And when it is, then we're back in our true power. So find a situation, think of a situation that you're finding difficult and be willing to bless the situation with love. This is a really powerful thing to do. Blessing a situation with love, blessing yourself, blessing the other person, blessing the project, blessing the business, whatever it is, bless it with love and have yourself be in alignment with love, which is your true energy. And when you're aligned with that, now you're in your true power again. And now, by the way, anger has served its purpose, which was to tell you that you need to align with your true power, which is love. Let's look at the fixation. The fixation here is called judging. Judging is not itself a fixation. It's a mental habit that we develop that becomes our fixation. And everybody's psychology is mostly made up of a gaggle of judgments, criticisms, assessments, evaluations, suspicions, accusations, opinions, and various commentary, isn't it? If you pay attention to your so-called thoughts, you'll see most of them are judgments. And these thoughts do not come from your original mind of your unconditioned self. They come from your ego's psychology, which is governed by a basic fear that I'm not lovable, and a passion, which is that sense of anger and our loss of power. Babies don't judge themselves. Imagine meeting a newborn baby that was self-critical. Babies don't feel inadequate. They don't appear to judge themselves or others as being not good enough or not cute enough or not smart enough or not successful enough. Babies don't avoid mirrors the way adults do. And when they do look in the mirror, they don't see judgments because they're not judging themselves. Babies don't hold resentments. They're too young to hold a resentment yet. On the contrary, actually, also it's amazing to witness how quickly they can drop a judgment, or sorry, not a judgment, a bit of sadness. You know, they can cry full out and then it's gone. They drop it. It's amazing. Babies are also not pessimistic. They haven't given up on the future yet. They're still very much with the original mind and they dwell in possibility. So let's not judge our judgments, just acknowledge that judging is common, but it's not natural. So why do we judge? We're judging to make ourselves good or to try to experience the goodness again. This leads to what I call the self-improvement problem. This isn't just type 1 personalities, this is all of us. We are practicing self-improvement instead of self-acceptance. Self-improvement is well-intentioned. Self-improvement is a reaction to our basic fear and self-judgment that we're not good enough as we are. The problem with self-improvement, as well-intentioned as it is that it's exhausting and also that it's endless. Self-improvement is a trap because fundamentally, it doesn't matter how much you improve yourself, you're always left with the feeling that you need to improve yourself more. And this is the big thing, no amount of self-improvement can make up for any lack of self-acceptance. The fear of self-acceptance is that if I accept myself, then my life will stop improving. The miracle of self-acceptance is that the more you accept yourself, the more your life improves. The great adventure at one is to be willing to drop your judgments. In the first class, I shared a poem by Hafiz called "The Subject Tonight is Love," and I'd like to share another one with you now. It's called "Drop the Knife." It's a poem and it's a story, and it goes like this. Once a young woman said to me, "Hafiz, what is the sign of someone who knows God?" I became very quiet and looked deep into her eyes and then replied, "My dear, they have dropped the knife. Someone who knows God has dropped the cruel knife that most so often use upon their tender self and others." The great work is to drop the knife. Back to A Course in Miracles again for a moment. In A Course in Miracles, it says, "Lay down the cruel sword of judgment that you hold against your throat and put aside the withering assaults with which you seek to hide your holiness." Love and judgment are opposites, and from one comes all the sorrows of the world, and from the other comes the peace of God itself. So the virtue is what we apply to the basic fear, to the passion, and to the fixation. And the virtue at one is serenity. And we can all practice this because this is a mind without judgment. Imagine that, a mind without judgment. A question you can ask yourself is, am I judging or am I loving? In any given situation, just ask that question. Am I judging or am I loving? Judging, why do we want to let judging go? Here's the big reason, because judging is not seeing. When you judge yourself, all you see is your judgments about you. The self you judge is not the real you. The self you love is who you really are. And when you judge someone, all you see is your judgments about them. So all you're really looking at is projections. And this is why Jesus said, first remove the beam, the log, out of your own eye, and then you can see clearly. And then, you can do your work. But judging is not seeing. Judging is not wisdom. Judging is not loving. Judging is what distorts our perception and gets in the way of true vision. It's a paradox. It's when we drop our judgments that we're able to see through the eyes of love. And when we see through the eyes of love, then we see what's really here. So, a spiritual practice. There's a poem I wrote called Love's Prayer. And Love's Prayer is a pretty good spiritual practice. This is Love's Prayer. Beloved one, you cannot judge yourself and know who you are. The truth about you cannot be judged. Put aside your judgments then for one sweet holy moment and let me show you something wonderful. See what it's like to be you when you stop judging yourself. What you judge is just an image. After the last judgment, you will know yourself again. Love will appear in your own mirror to greet you as your friend, for you are lovable and you are made of love. Let's try this for a moment. Let's take a moment and just imagine this. Imagine, what's it like to be me when I'm not judging myself? Just take a moment with this. What's it like to be me when I'm not judging myself? Now, initially, this can feel a little disorientating, but just stay with it because judging is such a habit for all of us. What's it like to be me when I'm not judging myself? How would I live if I knew that God isn't judging me? God is love. How would I live if I knew that life is not judging me? Here's one more for your journal. Tell me one good thing that could happen if you judged yourself less. I'm going to suggest to you that if you judged yourself less, you would experience your innate goodness. You would experience your original blessing. Also, you would judge others less. What we do to ourselves, we do to everybody else, even though we don't mean to, we do. If you judged yourself less, you would clean up your relationship with God and you wouldn't project your fear, your shame, and your judgments onto God. If you loved yourself more by judging yourself less, you would become a blessing to the world. I want to share with you just one more idea, if I may. And it's actually to do with a story from St. Francis. And it's St. Francis meeting the leper. Now, at the time, St. Francis was very much in the wilderness. He was very much in his dark night of the soul. And St. Francis had a very privileged life, really. He was the son of a merchant and would always wear fine silks, and it was all very, very lovely. But there were lepers near Assisi, and everybody knew about them, and everybody was terribly afraid of the lepers, including St. Francis. He was actually disdainful of the lepers. He had, in his dark night of the soul, begun to glimpse a vision and to have an experience of something greater than himself. So that was happening. Anyway, one day he's riding his horse and there's a leper that approaches him. And normally he would ride off at full speed, but something made him stop this time. He got off the horse. He approached the leper and he gave the leper all his money. He kissed the leper. He hugged the leper. He offered his love to the leper. The story goes that when he got back on the horse, the leper wasn't there anymore. Each and every one of us has to go through something that I like to call love's initiation, which is the willingness to love something that you previously found unlovable. For St. Francis, the leper was that something. But of course, a leper could be another person, but it could be not just that. It could be a fear you have, a wound you have, a bias you have, a prejudice you have. The point is that your leper is anything that you find unlovable. And this is shadow work, really. The shadow is anything that you will not love. You can have a dark shadow or a light shadow, but it's anything that you do not love. And love's initiation is to be willing to love what you have previously been judging. Love's initiation is just that. And if we accept it, we are then ordained by love. Love then becomes love's reward. And the more we choose love, the more love we experience in our life, and the more opportunities we get to love, and the more we get to love without edges. And this is our great work, ultimately. I actually think we're already ordained by love, really, and that's why we're here. But the work is just this, to love the unlovable. It's to find whatever it is that we've been judging and be willing to set aside our judgment just for a moment and notice what happens when we see that person, that situation, that experience, that fear through the eyes of love. The great work, I believe, is ultimately not to make the world a better place. The great work is to love the world. If we set out to make the world a better place, we're full of our own ideas of what that should look like and how that should be. But if we are willing rather to love the world, and to love the world, that means to empty ourselves of all judging and to allow ourselves to see through the eyes of love, which is very much the work at one, then our judging is replaced by loving. And now we become more visionary, more discerning, wiser than we could ever have hoped to imagine we would be. And that is the great work. Okay, I'm going to pause there and invite Caroline to join us.
That was absolutely wonderful. I mean, well done, you.
Thank you, Caroline. It's a big start, isn't it? One is like the cannon that just gets us off on the journey. It's amazing. It's powerful.
But it's all of the many little everything, with pearls of wisdom that just dropped all the way through your class this morning. So I'm just going to pick up a few of those threads and do what I can with it. But well done, you. I'll see you at the end of class.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I especially loved, of course, I absolutely loved that Robert used, I can't see you if I take my glasses off, that Robert used Teresa of Avila and the way of perfection. And that always just makes me happy. But most of all, discussing Plato and introducing one as this Plato's law of one that restores us to original consciousness. I'm just going to hit a pause button and think, why is this even of importance now? Why do you need to learn about this now? What is it that makes this so valuable for you? If there was such a thing as the era of one, the era of discovering the power of whole, of what it means to be whole instead of fragmented, of what it means to function with all your parts together. That's what this time is about. That's exactly what this time is about. If I could take you off the planet and have you seated in the archetypal realm, and you could view evolution and its impact on the human community. Instead of, we look at life from a day to day, and we look up and we look day to day and moment to moment. But in fact, if I could just grab you and say, no, that's like constantly thinking the grain of sand in your eye is the whole ocean. When in fact, to take a look at the whole ocean just for a second and say, what's going on here? And you realize that evolution, whatever this force that we call evolution is, which is an archetypal current of the divine that is always moving life into its next stage and its next phase and its next. As I've said 1,000,000,000 times, when we entered the nuclear age, I think we activated a stage, an essential stage of our evolution, because we had created a means of our own destruction, but we were not, and we are still not conscious enough to not use those weapons to destroy the only home we have. So we had to be put on fast forward. The only way through it, since we cannot undo this consciousness of nuclear weaponry and the destructive force that it unleashes, the only thing left is for us to evolve into a quality of species incapable of using that kind of destruction. That we evolve into a level of our potential that embraces the human community, that gets that all life breathes together, that we actually get that the collective unconscious is really the inner net that is a duplicate of the internet, that we are inwardly connected to each other, that that every decision you actually make really does in some energetic way impact the whole. That this essential move toward becoming and understanding what holism is, the need to be whole, the need to integrate all the parts of our body, mind, soul, spirit, health, that this is your micro earth, and that how we treat our micro earth is how we must, is like our contribution to the macro earth. That what is in one is in the whole, that as we treat each other, so we are actually really treating ourselves. If I poison the well, I poison myself because it's my water too. Somehow, that equation of love as the power that would actually, as the to me, as the life force itself, as a Robert, as they say in the scripture, God is love, and but that's those three simple words. I think in order to crack through that, you have to get out of the idea that love is personal, that is the personal emotion. We experience love, like, think of it as love is color, and all the many, many colors of the universe. That's like all the many shades of love. So you can have blue love or red love or pink love or orange or whatever color, and everyone is a different experience. I'm having an orange love day. I'm having a red love day. I'm really infuriated, or whatever. You're having a different vibration, but all of it is color. All of it's the nature of color. All of it's the creative force of color. All of it is the nature of color. That is God. God is this all, it's everything. And the way we experience the power of God is to personalize it. We want to personalize. That's why we think God looks like us. I mean, we've even done that. We've even painted pictures of God to look just like us. I mean, we're just obsessed with ourselves. And it's incomprehensible unless that's why I love mystics. Mystics have had experiences of the God that is, which is this force of light that is filled with love. So they have a sensation that the divine is both blindingly bright, but also this incredible phenomenon of love that is cosmic. It is not personal. It is simply what God feels like. It is simply, and how we come close to feeling the nature of God while we're in the physical form is through loving each other. Through how much can I, through love, through loving each other. And we discover how powerful love is by thinking, well, if I turn off the love, I see how much harm it does to someone. If I let the love flow, they seem to resurrect from the dead. Love is that powerful. Love is that powerful. Love at the impersonal. Just if you think of it as the organic nature of God, divine organics. You just think of it as the organic nature of life, the force that the natural impulse toward goodness, toward kindness, this natural impulse that human beings have to feel for each other, this incredible response system we have is the organic nature of God in us, sensing the God in others. This era of holism, if I could grab you all and take you off the planet, and we could excuse me, we could look below. If you can imagine, there is this impulse now that is saying and directing everything like a magnet to become whole, to discover how much better something would function when the concept, when the template of holism is put into it. For example, how we have completely shifted how we approach our health. Now it is a holistic approach instead of looking at each of our body parts as sovereign. My heart's sovereign, my kidneys are, my spleen, my this, my that, that and each one of them gets their own territory and their own constitution and their own. The body couldn't survive that. But by approaching a person and saying, why don't you tell me about your emotions and tell me about your history? Tell me about talk to me about your internal self, because your biography becomes your biology. So you are a story, you're a narrative, you're filled with archetypal forces. All of this together, the whole is you. And for me to just look at your blood readout or your urinalysis or is never going to give me the power that a whole portrait of you would provide as I look at you through a hologram, through a hologram. The power of that is so phenomenal. And the truth is that the more we apply whole thinking as a lens through which to see everything, like how would this situation in my life be improved if I approached it as a calculation? What do I need to do to make this whole? To start speaking to yourself in a very technical love language, with dealing with the number one, dealing with whole. What choices should I make that would pull the fragments together instead of keeping them apart? This is the practice of God. This is the practice of holism. This is the practice of love. And I love to put it at ground level, because that's really where we live, and that's where these decisions make so much difference. And it's also where you discover the power of the smallest decision, that in fact is not small, but it transforms the whole of your life, the whole of your life. That if you decide that the law of all is one is actually a mystical truth that I need to live according to, that truth now is a biophysical, spiritual dictate in my health, that my health now resonates to all is one, that when when I fracture myself in any way, I fracture my thinking, I fracture my emotions, when I am fractured and fragmented all over the place, my health pays a price for that, because I know better that in order for me to thrive, I need to live in a way where my choices do not fracture me, but support the whole of me. Support the whole of me. And this is where it gets to be one of those incredible challenges, because in the beginning, when you start looking at how do I, work so that how do I make practices of holism or oneness in such a way that um, the great challenge is that it will, it could, it might, it often does produce a type of narcissism, a type of me first, because I have to take care of myself first. I have to make sure that I'm just, and this idea of put your own mask on first, and you first, and you, and that is somehow or other self-love. No. I tell you what I think it is, though. I think it's essential. I think it's an essential stage that we go through to really begin to understand how precious our life force really is, how precious this power that we have really is, and how we are the caretakers of this precious soul power that we have. And that of all the colors in the crayon box that we have available, all the different variations of love, from rage, which is a form of the absence of angry love, to compassion, to kindness, to the more we get to a place where what motivates us isn't ourself, but simply motivated by this is what the power of love can do. And this situation calls for that power. I'm going to say this again. We go through the stage of selfishness, of narcissism, of thinking about I need love and thinking about all that. And that's all necessary. It's essential. Of learning what happens when we don't love, of learning what happens when we're hurt, and how the rage of that makes us become unloving, and what that does to us. We go through all of that as part of the essential maturation of the human soul, to get to the point, to that place where all of it teaches us about how powerful love is. We see how powerful it is when it is not used. We become destructive. We can become evil. We can do all kinds of things when we do not put love in an equation. It gives us permission to be on the dark side. And to this, I will say something. When someone says, I am afraid of the power of love, one of the things people fear, it's not ever articulated in its fear. I don't know that it's that conscious, but maybe it is. I'm not one to let people off the hook, so I'm going to say it's somewhat conscious, is that the power of love is so extraordinary as it becomes simply love, not with an agenda, not with a target, not with a person, just what love feels like. That what happens is it becomes difficult, if not impossible, to choose to be aligned to darkness. This is a big, huge, big thing I'm dropping on you. It's that, and Robert says it so much more eloquently, that once you have love, you cannot act in negative ways. But I'm going to push that envelope and say that the reason people fear the power of love is because it means they can't act in negative ways anymore. And becoming whole, becoming healthy. I wrote the book, Why People Don't Heal. For years and years and years and years, I was just mesmerized with, why do people not want to be whole? Why do we sabotage that? Why do we sabotage our own wholeness when it would seem to me that this quest people have to find themselves, to find their purpose, this is your purpose, is to become that human being. But we sabotage it. And what we're really sabotaging is our capacity to experience more and more colors of love simultaneously, to experience the whole of the divine spectrum within us, to experience the power of love, accompanied by a heart that wants to share that power, not for personal gain, but because that person comes to understand that this situation would be remedied by the power of love. And it isn't personal. It's just what love does. It's just what love does. And maybe it would, you become quiet for a moment and say, tell me what to do. And it could be as simple as maybe saying a kind word to someone, and it changes the atmosphere, because love will do the rest. The vibration contained in it, the light contained in it will do the rest to make it whole. This era of holism that we have begun, the era of pulling together the fragments of humanity, this is why it is so tumultuous now, because becoming whole, becoming one, is not something we really have aspired to want. Number two, it means that we have to rethink the power that being separated gives us. We have to rethink that. We have to, and if you apply it to your body, and imagine that you're sick and the doctor says, well, I have some medicine and you need to think it through, because I have some medicine for your heart. You got a bad heart, but it's going to blow out your kidney. Or I have this other medicine and it won't blow out your kidney. Do you want, but it works a little differently, might take a little longer, and you have to do more to accommodate how this medicine works. You're going to have to change your diet. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to help it along. You have to do things like think about the whole of yourself to empower this particular medical treatment. And you think, but I'm not ready to change my diet, and I'm not ready, and I still don't want. You'd be surprised how many people think that way. That in fact, they will continue to sabotage their health because becoming uncomfortable is just too difficult. Becoming whole is an uncomfortable journey. It's a very uncomfortable journey. There's nothing comfortable about collecting your fragments. Look at the world. There's nothing comfortable as we learn, as we've connected ourselves technology, with the internet, and we are making it so that we are in communication with each other. So the idea of going to war and bombing each other again, like World War One or two, is so preposterous, and yet here we are. On what could the brink of something in Ukraine and Russia and the middle world, and all that is rupturing up because becoming whole, letting nations have their authority, letting all people begin to come together with this maybe idea that we need to have a global community, if only to start having global environmental laws, global climate change laws, start out with laws that begin to, and rules and regulations, agreements, if you like that word better, that serve the whole, But giving up the power of being fragmented, giving up the power of one of your fragments in order to avoid becoming whole is a tremendous challenge, as much for an individual as it is for a group. Here's a story. Robert's got his stories. I've got my stories. Stories are great. Story time. I was teaching about forgiveness and its role in healing, in health, in well-being. And there was a man in my workshop. And then we'll never forget this. And he stood up and he said, "Stop it. Stop it. I can't bear to hear anymore." He said, "I know what you're saying about forgiveness is absolutely the truth, but I need my anger. I need it. I need my anger to survive the people I live with, because the way I am beginning to understand forgiveness and its need and its role as a a language of love, and all that it means to look upon another person and widen the lens through which you see them and think, why do I have such judgment of you? Why do I have such expectations? Because I want to control you, because I'm a control freak, and I want to make sure that you do everything I say, and blah 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 blah." He says, in order for me to still stay with them and love them at that level at which they make their choices, for them, that's love. I need to stay angry, except that he had reached the point where he saw the futility of his anger and the power of impersonal cosmic love that was beginning to make its way through to him. And he said, I know that if I really became this forgiving person, if I really used this power and all that goes with it, how I feel like I can see someone more compassionately, I can understand them more deeply. He said they would interpret that as weakness in me. They would think, he forgives anything, he's just a fool. They would interpret me as weak. And he said they would never understand the place from which I'm coming. And that's the pain that is so great. It was such an insight. It was so profound. He actually left my workshop. He was weeping, and so was I later. But this is the challenge of becoming whole, because as you do, and as you make that choice, what you are really becoming capable of is sensing the power that is love without it being personal. It just is. It just is. Without you needing a target, a reason, a person, a payoff. That's what love in the sticky little field of when love is power. That's how the game's played. But when the soul and consciousness and the whole of you begins to crack a little bit, and you realize every situation can be made better by the application of love, not personal, just whether it is through kindness, whether it is through my deciding to hold back judgment. All of these are profound acts of love that switch a situation in the blink of an eye, in the blink of an eye. But mind you, as I talk to you about your spiritual practice, there's a reason it's called practice. It's because given human nature, we will slide back. We will slide back to the simplicity of judgment, to the simplicity of letting our temper go, to the simplicity of positioning ourselves front and center in our life, and not thinking about the whole. It takes discipline, spiritual practice, to practice being a whole being, and the power of that, and the power of that, and the mystical truth that no matter what moment you're in or who you're with, there's a reason why you are there in that moment. And you will never know those reasons. There's the ones that sent you there because it's lunchtime. But then but I still don't know why my whole consciousness and yours is together with why we're together right now. But you will always know this, that choosing to contribute to the whole of a situation, to its wholeness, to its holiness, to its becoming one force, is always the better decision. It is always the better decision. Choosing to fragment is to withhold love from something. And you can provide any number of reasons. They made me angry. You don't know, your pride, you're this, you're that. I don't care what it is. At the end of the day, I would say, I want you to just to add up your score. How'd you do today? How many of the decisions, choices, thinking, judgments, everything you were done motivated by that lens of, I want to see the whole here instead of just my piece. Even in a business meeting, you can open up the lens and say, I need to understand the whole, how everybody's feeling, not just me. The power of becoming whole is unbelievable, but it's earned one practice at a time. You have to earn it. And that's when you sense this is not personal love. It is simply the power of love. Hooah! I am going to close. I'm mindful. I have to be mindful of time. I'm very rarely mindful of time, but I thought this is the perfect prayer. Okay, close your eyes. Lord, grant me the grace of devotion, especially when my tendency to sabotage my spiritual practice arises, as I know it will. I need to break through that barrier, that wall that prevents me from reaching the interior of my soul. Grant me this grace, Lord, even though it is often difficult to carry. But it would mean so much to feel the grace of devotion within me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We will see you for class 3 shortly. Hello, you.
I was just looking up your amazing prayer. Oh my God. Grant me the grace of devotion. I love that.
Grant me the
Wow.
grace of devotion.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought,
So
okay, I'm going to take that one to bed tonight. Thank you.
yeah, grant me the grace of devotion. So powerful. Wow.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's so much here. That was an hour and a half, and this is one I'll just be watching again very, very soon.
Well,
Lots
you
to
did a
take in.
beautiful job. Wow.
Mm.
All of that, and it's just the first number of the Enneagram.
Yeah. This is the joy of the Enneagram, I have to say. I mean, you get your money's worth with the Enneagram for sure. Oof. Yep, we've only just begun and it's all here already. So that's the great thing as well about the Enneagram. It's all there on every point, actually. And that's why, to your point about love, you know, you take it personally, but do so with an impersonal approach to the whole thing.
Precisely. You have to be you take it intimately, but impersonally. That's
Yeah,
the best combination.
yeah, for sure.
Impersonal and intimate. It's totally intimate and
Yeah,
totally impersonal.
amazing. Caroline, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody, for joining us. See you for class 3.
See you for class 3.